Hey guys, it's Ollie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'm going to be making a care video on the Fowler's toad. So the Fowler's toad is all around the US. It's pretty popular. You can stumble upon them pretty easily. But I also noticed there's not really any care videos on them. Whenever I got mine, it was kind of an issue of me trying to figure out what exactly was right and wrong. I figured I would make a care video telling you guys how I have to take care of my Fowler's toad. I will start with a disclaimer. I am not a professional. This is just my experiences. Definitely watch more than one video on them if you can, and find as much information online if you're ever considering getting these guys as a pet. That being said, they are beginner. Toads are relatively easy to take care of. They still need regular maintenance and regular feeding. But other than that, compared to other amphibians and reptiles, toads are very easy to care for. They do have some downsides, which is like if you have a kid that wants one, they can't hold it very often at all. They'll stress out the frog, but it can harm it. So you have to, when you hold them, you should rinse your hands off, no soap, just rinse them off with plain water, and you can handle them that way. Or you can be extra safe and use gloves. I use gloves, and I think that they are a treat to watch. They just do some of the goofiest things. So this is my Fowler's toad here. I don't know if that's focused, but she doesn't have a name yet. She's fairly new for the most part, and I just can't find a name that fits her. If you have a name suggestion, let me know. She is in here because I don't have any gloves, and I can't really hold her, so she's in her feeding container. So Fowler's toad are typically all over the US and fairly common to find. They're pretty common as well as like the American toad. So I just figured I would do a care video on them since I have one, and there's not really a lot of them on YouTube. Alright, so let's get right into the care video. So their adult size is around 2 to 5 inches. The females will get a little bit bigger than the males. What you would house them in, you could house them in a tote, which a lot of people will do. So a lot of people like the totes because it'll hold more humidity in, as long as you just poke holes along the sides and you get one that like latches, then you're set for that. However, I have her in a 10-gallon and she seems to be doing okay. It is very humid in this room during the summer, so I'm not too worried about humidity. It's been fine as long as I mist her once a day. And if it does start getting less, you can always use aluminum tape to put on the top there, so that it's that humidity can stay in. That's actually what I do with my ball python as well, and it works wonders. You can house them in bigger enclosures than a 10-gallon. She's in a 10-gallon. You can also get up to 3 toads, I believe, in a 10-gallon. So for their substrate, you want something that can hold in that humidity. So I would recommend Eco Earth and cypress malt. Just like mix it all together. It's the wet Eco Earth, the kind that you have to hydrate. Use that as their bedding. It works pretty well for toads. And that's for every toad for the most part. They do like to dig, so definitely have at least a couple of inches there. They kind of like go backwards into the ground. And they spend a lot of their time during the day buried. So you definitely have to have a water dish. That is a 100% thing you have to have. But so you need a water dish that is shallow enough to where it won't go past their chin, because you don't want them to drown themselves. They are not aquatic animals. They are land animals and will drown in water. They can't swim. So make sure they're not going to drown in their water bowl, but that it's deep enough for them to soak in, because they drink through their skin. They don't drink with their mouths. They absorb all of that water into their skin, which brings me to my next topic. So when you do give these guys water, and when you mist them, you need to treat your water. You can use well water or spring water untreated, but if you use just from the tap, use some Rub-to-Save or another water conditioner, as long as you're getting that chlorine out of your water, because at least here in the US, they chlorinate our water. So that's not good for them. They'll absorb that. It can kill them. I use this for all my reptiles and amphibians, just to be on the safe side. It's pretty cheap. So just treat all their water with that, whether it's the water you mist with or the water that you put in their bowl. just make sure you treat it, unless it's well water or spring water. Some people use distilled. I don't recommend it because you're taking the chlorine away from it, but you're also taking away all the other natural minerals. So I just wouldn't use distilled. I've heard a lot of bad things with it because they're not getting the minerals they could need. Because all you need to really get rid of is the chlorine. So the next thing a lot of people ask about is like the temperature and the humidity. You know, like I said earlier, the humidity is very important. You need to keep that up. They like higher humidities. But the good thing is they almost don't need any heat sources. So room temperature is great as long as your room temperature is like 70 to 75-ish degrees Fahrenheit. I think you're fine. Any lower than that, you might want to get some heat. Make sure it's on a thermostat. If you do, always put it on a thermostat. If you don't, it will cook your animal. So you can do that. Mine doesn't need any heat. It's consistently about 75 in here. They can handle a little bit warmer too. Just make sure there's no large fluctuations throughout the day because that can be harmful for them. Lighting, they don't need any special lighting. So they are nocturnal, which means they don't really get any sun anyway. It can be beneficial for them to have UV if you really, really want to. It wouldn't hurt, but they don't need it. You do want to give them like a light so they know that it is daytime, so they can regulate their schedules, like to sleep. If you have a very well lit room, you can just have the window open as long as it's not like directly in front of the window. Never put them directly in front of the window because it can cook your animal because the sun can hit through the glass and make it really hot. But if it's like well enough to where the whole room's lit up, it's fine, you can use that. I actually use those lamps back there because they're on a timer, so it actually turns on and off when I tell it to. So the next thing is their food habits. So it's pretty easy to feed them. You want to feed them 2 to 3 bugs every other day. So they can eat a multiple of things. They can eat crickets, cockroaches such as red runners and dubia roaches. They can eat earthworms. They pretty much eat anything. Doesn't mean you should feed them everything, but they're not picky. I feed mine dubia roaches and earthworms. She's a big fan of the dubia roaches. I'll add a clip in here to show you kind of how they eat. It's actually really interesting. So if you watch him, he's tapping his little toes back there. We're not really sure why they do that. It's either to entice prey or because they're excited. Some scientists say it's just because they're like anticipating food. Alright, so if when you do feed them, make sure that their prey is no bigger than the space in between their eyes, so on the top of their head. And you look at the space between their eyes. You don't want the prey to be too much bigger than that. It has an exoskeleton because it can make it harder to mash up and can make it harder to digest later and can cause impaction. An earthworm, I would recommend 2 to 3 times the size of that space because they're easier, but you also don't want to give them like way too much. So that's my general size guide. Some people might say different. That's just my rule of thumb. Of course, most animals need some kind of supplement. So they do need calcium twice a week minimum. They do also need vitamins. I use Repashy Plus on most of the feedings. So every other feeding I'll use Repashy Plus, and the other feedings I just use calcium. You need to give them calcium at least twice a week, at the very least. I do it every feeding. I give supplements every single feeding for her, but at least twice a week should be fine. So they can eat in their enclosure. It's fine. However, if you are feeding things like dubia and earthworms, you might want to feed them in something else. So this is actually her feeding enclosure here. And the problem with those guys is they will burrow. So when you put them in the tank, at least dubias, as far as my experience, they'll instantly start going into the ground. So then they're down there, and your frog may never catch them. Take that as precaution. Some bugs, like crickets, you don't really need to worry about. Always monitor with crickets if you're feeding crickets. they have been known to get on the backs of your animal, and they will like chew on them and cause harm. So make sure you watch crickets. Make sure you watch them until they're done eating. So as for decor, that's always the fun part. You definitely, like I said earlier, you want a water bowl for them to soak in, but not one that's too deep. And also one they can get in and out of pretty easily. You definitely want some hides. So I just have like flower pots in there, like plastic flower pots. I'll show you guys her enclosure in just a minute. But I also put some leaf litter in it as well, so they can kind of hide underneath that. And if you can find a place that doesn't use any pesticides, you can actually go ahead and get some from outside and then treat it at your house. I'll make another video explaining how to treat leaves and wood and like rocks from outside. Or you can also order it online. I would still treat it though. There's plenty of information online for how to do that. You want some moss in there. Also fake flowers. Fake flowers are really nice for them. Or you can do a bioactive as well. She will definitely be being switched to a bioactive in the future. But until then, just definitely give them like things to hide, you know. Alright, so this is my Fowler toad enclosure. It's not great. It is just a start. I'm waiting for some things to come in. But I do keep her in a glass enclosure. So you can see she has 2 hides. There is one here. I just kind of covered it all with dirt to make it look more natural. A shallow water bowl, another hide there. I usually have a bunch of leaf litter scattered around, but I need to put more in there. Some of it kind of got mixed in with the dirt whenever I was redoing it. And a couple of fake plants. Always make sure you give them plenty of room to run around and dig, because they will use the space you give them. They will absolutely, toads are very active animals. Alright, so mold can become a problem. It's constantly humid, especially if you have some wood in there. You're going to want to check it fairly often. You're going to want to check your enclosure for mold. If there is mold, you want to remove it immediately and find a way to fix it. So one thing you can do is get some springtails. I actually breed springtails. So there's little white bugs in there. Kind of see them moving around. And they eat mold. So these are very good to have in any humid enclosure. I use them in both my frog and my toad's enclosure, as well as my Madagascar sting cockroach enclosures, and as well as my snail enclosures. So these guys are great. I never have any mold problems with them around. And they're fairly easy. They're a little expensive off the bat for a few bugs, but they really come in handy, and it's well worth the money, and they breed like crazy. Alright guys, I really hope you enjoyed that video. I hope it was informative and it helped you in some way, or just entertained you if that's what you were looking for. Thank you for watching. Bye.